On the next episode of Painting and Travel, Roger and Sarah Bansemer traveled to Georgetown in the Cayman Islands. Sarah explores the town and its waterfront as Roger sets up his easel and paints a yellow house in the early morning light.
We're still in the Cayman Islands, and we've traveled this island from north to south, east and west. This island's about 22 miles long and 8 miles wide at the widest point. And we've been all over this island looking for some beautiful things to paint, but the small little houses we were sort of expecting to see with the tin roofs and the brightly colored sides don't exist for the most part. We did find this little community here, and I found one beautiful place. I love the shape of this house. We have a few cars in the way now, but since we're painting this, we can eliminate those. It's just an empty lot here, so we're going to set up right in the middle of this neighborhood and try and do a little painting of this cute little house. Well, the sun is really starting to get low on the horizon now, so I don't have much time. So I'm going to set up my paints on my easel. I'm using acrylics today, as I usually do. I've got an 11 by 14 inch piece of masonite covered with gesso. That will be my painting surface. So I'll put my easel here on the beach and get started. And while I'm doing that, Sarah's going to give you another little tour of downtown Georgetown here on the Cayman Islands.
Grand Cayman Island lies 450 miles due south of Miami Beach. The main industries here are tourism and offshore banking. The population of 35,000 is diverse, but cruise ship visitors daily outnumber the entire population of the island. Popular attractions are easily arranged as passengers step ashore, including a much larger version of this updated Nautilus. In 1984, Roger helped in building and creating many of the sculptural embellishments which were part of the 16th century style frigate ship. It still sails the Cayman Islands daily here at Georgetown on a pirate adventure cruise. The exception to this daily activity is on Sunday, when everything is closed except a few restaurants. The town takes on a unique feeling, perhaps the way it was decades ago. Window shopping becomes the main activity. Grand Cayman is famous for its clear waters and beautiful reefs. Just a few hundred feet offshore, the wreck of the Cali is easily accessible. A snorkel, a mask, a sense of adventure, and sunscreen are all you need to have fun. It is sometimes hard to get the local flavor of a town and its people, to find something that doesn't totally revolve around merchandise. But just a block from downtown, we found fishermen hauling in their daily catch. Along with a fresh spiny lobster, barracuda, bonita, and wahoo were being cleaned and sold to whomever happened by, giving us a different sense of island reality, one based more on tradition and natural resources. It was very satisfying to see this small, unstructured event, which added a lively, artistic richness to our experience in Grand Cayman.
Last evening when Sarah and I were here, I took a few photographs of this house. It was an absolutely beautiful sky. Tonight we have nothing except this bright sun that I'm looking into. So what's happening is I'm just getting a big silhouette here of this house. And this is what happens when you paint on location. Things change like this all the time. So I think instead of trying to struggle with this right now, we may try and come back early tomorrow morning when the light's hitting this side of the house. This is why it's often so much easier to work from photographs than it is from real life. But there's also a beautiful reward that comes with getting out here in this type of a landscape with the surf. You can get all the senses and the feelings. So we'll try and come back here tomorrow morning and start this again. What I'm going to do is draw this house in the palm tree right now, and that way maybe I'll get a little bit of a jump start on it tomorrow morning. Here we are back on location. It's Sunday morning, so everything is quite quiet and peaceful around here. Got a nice breeze coming in off the ocean, and as you can see, the light is so much better than it was last night when we were getting just a silhouette of that house. I took some time last night to sketch this in a little bit more from a photograph I took. I think I'll get started. I have my acrylic paints out, white, ultramarine blue. I have some of this light blue oxide, bit of an odd color, but it's very Caribbean. We have Indian yellow, cadmium yellow light, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and I have burnt sienna. I really don't know what colors I'm going to need or not need in this painting, so I'm probably putting out more colors than I need. For brushes, I have a variety of brushes again, just some flats, some fan brushes, and a pointed brush or two for some detail. And generally I don't use the pointed brush out here in the field very much because I put the detail in the painting when we're back in the studio. This morning, earlier, there were some very beautiful clouds about sunrise. Now it's about an hour or so after sunrise, but I remember those clouds. They were just a very salmon pink color and sort of a grayish cloud underneath, and the sky itself seemed to have this cerulean blue color. So even though that's disappeared a little bit, since I have so much sort of vacant space up here, I'm going to try and replicate those clouds I saw earlier this morning. As I drew this with graphite pencil last night, I know when I start painting this, these colors are going to smear a little bit from the graphite pencil. Normally I would take some fixative and spray this so it wouldn't smear, but we're 1,000 miles from home and I don't have any with me, so we'll just have to work around that. I'm going to lose a lot of this drawing as I work with this painting. I hear roosters off in the background there. There's always roosters here in the Caribbean. This palm tree is full of coconuts up there. All these palm fronds and all the leaves from the palm tree are windswept back from the ocean. So I may try and exaggerate that. Down here at the horizon line, it's always a little bit warmer. I'm going to put a touch of yellow in with this cerulean blue. Almost makes a green color, but warmer than the colors above it. I'm going to try and capture that early morning sky that was so beautiful on our drive out here. And we did snap a couple of photographs too, so if I get stuck here, I'll have some reference pictures back in the studio. These pencil lines are not smearing around my board as much as I thought they would, so that's kind of a good thing to know. Pick up a little alizarin crimson, white, and a little cadmium yellow. I'm trying to get that salmon color look in those clouds I saw this morning. We have some beautiful little cumulus clouds up here right now, but they've lost their color from this morning. Before I get into painting this little house, let me talk a little bit about the perspective. This is pretty much a one-point perspective, meaning that I'm just seeing the front of this house, but it's not entirely a one-point perspective because I'm seeing a little bit of the side of the house. So that makes it a two-point perspective. So the lines on this house run to a vanishing point, and that's the top of the roof, and that runs to a vanishing point out to about here, and the vanishing point is always on the horizon line. So we have one there, the bottom of the roof, and then we have the bottom of the house, and they all run to a vanishing point somewhere around here. Now these lines here on this side of the house are almost parallel to the horizon, but not quite, since it's a two-point perspective. So the lines, the vanishing point here and at the bottom of the house, they would run to a vanishing point way out there on the horizon somewhere. Now there are other vanishing points too on a painting like this, and that would be the vanishing point of the roof. And that vanishing point, of course, is not on the horizon. It would be way up in the sky somewhere like this. There are other perspective considerations on a painting like this, but that's basically what I'm dealing with. Mixing up a little bit of yellow ochre and burnt sienna. I'll put a little touch of ultramarine blue in there to gray it down. No white, but I'm going to cover this beach with a kind of a dark color. Keep that kind of thin so it'll dry quickly, and I can go over it with the highlights of these rocks. Little railroad vine that's around here, different weeds. And then since this is dark right now, then I can put my highlights of the white sand over this dark area. I like to work from dark to light. Rough that up a little bit more to give myself some texture back there. It's not a lot of texture in this painting, so primarily I'm going to have to rely on this area down here to give me some texture. I've taken some liberties with the drawing on this house. The shutters are closed, but I've opened them up. I'll give it a little bit more friendly look. And there's another house behind that, and I'm not going to put that in, although it just looks very beautiful this morning. I did want sort of a simplicity, Edward Hopper type of look. Not that I'm anywhere near that position in life, but I do have some photographs of that. Maybe that other house will end up in the painting, maybe not. Right now, I'm going to leave it out. Pick up a smaller brush, get some white and cadmium yellow light, a little bit of yellow ochre. We'll block this house in here. I'm squinting my eyes as I look at this, and by doing that I can tell more easily where the lightest lights are and the darkest darks. So as I look at this now, the lightest part of my painting is the top of this house, and this isn't far behind. I've also changed the position of this palm tree. I put it in this house here rather than beside it, because I want these elements to sort of connect and have a unity, to be one piece of the pie. So instead of having the palm tree over here, so we have a house and a palm tree, I put them together so we have one element. From where I'm sitting, I can't see the front of this house very well, but I liked the front of it because it did have a few little features of some windows and things. So I've also changed that in my drawing, actually from where the perspective I am. To actually get this perspective, I need to move out here, but there's some obstacles in the way. So that's the beauty of painting. We can change things however we like as we go along. The front side of this house is in shadow, so I'll take some ultramarine blue and yellow ochre and put this in here. Indicate the shadow side of the house. It's always a hard question to know what color things are when they're the same color, but they're in light and shadow. I mean, you've got a yellow house, but it's obviously not all the same color yellow, even though we think of it as, well, that's that color yellow. But you know, the shadow side is a totally different color, and a lot of things affect the colors, not only on the bright side, but on the shadow side. Reflections have a lot to do with it. The sky is going to have a lot of influence on the color of this yellow, and also the ground will have a lot of influence on these colors. Ultramarine blue and turquoise. It's pretty dark out there, but not terribly dark. I'm going to add a little white to this, and maybe a little bit of burnt sienna just to gray that water down. When I was finishing up this drawing last night, I was really hesitating because I had so much empty space up here and such little activity down here. I was really afraid that I was slighting myself as to what this whole painting is about, but when these clouds go in here, it will be a primary focus point of the painting. So as I progress here, I'm not quite as worried about it. And these open skies and the open ocean also is really sort of significant of what the Caribbean islands are. Let me see, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre. It's going to give me a green color. We've got some sea grapes back there. They're quite lovely. No detail yet. These are all big blocky shapes I'm adding. There's some little Australian pines that have sprouted up here. And Australian pines are one of my favorite trees, but they're considered a nuisance tree, at least in the United States. And they're not even allowed to be planted, at least in Florida, because they have such a shallow root system. At any rate, here they are, and I think they're quite lovely. So I will put them in, just an indication of them here. They're very feathery looking. Here's another point of putting elements together that maybe should work better if these at least covered part of the house to connect these elements together. So maybe I could make this a little bit bigger. Just bring some of this tree over into the house. I'm trying to get unity in these paintings. I don't want things disjointed at all. Not that they don't often end up that way, but I like to keep things sort of tight. I like to have no more than 3 elements in a painting. And there can be a lot of elements within the big elements, but and that's not a rule that I adhere to all the time. But here we have basically sky, and we have the beach area and the house. So, and really this could all be considered one element, and this another large element. This area down here needs to be a little darker. As I squint my eyes, you can sense that. So again, I'm going to put a thin wash on this area of land and dirt shells down here. This is better. These values tie together much better. The values here of the ocean and the earth, a little bit closer together in value. This, of course, is dry up here now, so I think I'll try and mix up some of those salmon colors we saw early on around sunrise and place a few of those in there. Alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow, and that makes a nice salmon color. I don't know what else to call it. I much prefer to finish these paintings in the studio. I'm not trying to achieve every small detail while I'm out here. The conditions are just too changeable all the time, as you could see from our false start last night, getting out here, getting all set up and everything, and then just realizing it just didn't work. But we've persisted. Now we've got some beautiful light out here, and it's another gorgeous day. But that's why we take photographs, so we can have good reference back in the studio. Don't disregard the use of photography at all, even if you are a person that likes to paint outside, because it's just a valuable tool. I haven't done anything to this white peak of the roof yet, because I've actually been sitting here thinking, what color is it? It's obviously white, but it's not pure white. But the sun is hitting that, so whatever the sun hits directly is going to be warm. So I'm going to take a little bit of cadmium yellow, mix it into the white. I don't want to get it too yellow because I don't want to conflict with this yellow here. So I want to make it a little bit grayer. Maybe I'll just take a touch of burnt sienna, and we'll just place that in there and call it white. And I'm sure adjustments will have to be made to this a little bit later. but I'm going to reserve my pure whites, if I use any at all, for some highlights. Pick up a smaller brush, and that's a tin roof on that house. So I'll get some ultramarine blue, burnt sienna again. I have lost the drawing that I did of the little porch. That's okay for now. I'm keeping in mind these perspective lines going back to this point on the horizon back here. This one, this one, this one. Also, the windows would have that same perspective. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. That makes a great gray color, sort of an all-purpose dark color for things like this window here. It's also hard, at least for me, to be accurate in some respects out in the field. I don't know, you just can't really get comfortable out here. I mean, I'm sitting on a rock. That's not a problem, but just manipulating yourself and your brushes and your paints and with the sunlight, I can get much more accuracy back in my studio, where I can actually sit up against a nice drawing board, place my hand on top of my hand, and work more accurately. And you know what? I think maybe I'll put a few indications of the palm tree in, but I'm going to leave most of that for studio work. Because, just like what I said earlier, the sort of the inability to get some good detail out in the field, if I put too much of that in now, I may have to sort of repaint my sky. But I'll indicate it here. Ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, sort of a brownish color. I'm going to keep this sort of spindly right now because I don't want to get big areas covered. That way it'll keep me from having to repaint the sky quite as much. Coconut palms have this shape almost like an explosion from a fireworks or something. All these leaves branch out from one center point. I love the way these leaves sweep back because of the wind. We've got two distinct colors on this tree trunk. We've got a warm color and a cool color. But since this is such a small painting, I'm just going to indicate that as one color right now. I'll make this sort of a warm color. By putting this dark color towards the bottom of this painting, this allows me to have these dark colors show through when I scumble this white on here, and I can more easily obtain texture down here doing it this way, as opposed to putting the light areas down first and then trying to put the dark areas over it. Call it quits out here in the field now, but got a pretty good start on this painting, and I've got all the elements that I wanted to get put down on my canvas. I've got my colors I want. I'm out here in the open so I can really see that firsthand what colors I have going. Of course, we have our reference photos. We can now take it back into the studio where conditions are a little bit more controlled, and I can be a little more comfortable, get down and put some details in this painting and finish it.
Well, Sarah and I have arrived back here at our home and studio, and I've had a few days to think about this painting and work on it a little bit. And as is usually the case, there are things I like about the painting and there's things that I don't like about the painting. So I'll go over a few of those points. Having a deep connection to my subject is very important to me while I paint. And although both Sarah and I love the Caribbean, it's not an area that we've lived in, nor are we that familiar with. So it poses certain problems while doing a painting because this subject was just not deeply rooted. And although I was very enthused about being there and painting this little house, when I got back here to the studio, that enthusiasm seemed to drop off a little bit, and I had problems with the painting, but that's just part of this procedure of art. Here are a few changes I made to try and improve this piece. The yellow house, which I really was attracted to begin with, when I got it back here to the studio, it just seemed too bright, too yellow, and the top of this just seemed too white. So I grade this down quite a bit, and I tried to make this area sort of one big block area without having individual things jump out at me. So I grade a lot of this area here. I think maybe the sky is the best part of this painting. It had a really good Caribbean feel to it. The salmon-colored clouds here and this cool blue at the top, which transitioned into a very warm blue here on the bottom. If I were to have a second shot at this painting, I would have changed the composition somewhat. I would have had more foreground here. I would have brought the horizon up to leave me with more area down here to work with. I also wouldn't have had quite as much sky, and I would have chopped the palm tree off about here. Let the top of the palm tree go off the top of the painting. So there's always improvements to be made, but one thing that I feel I have to do is complete paintings and then move on to something else. I don't want to get too stuck and too involved with one thing because I just get bogged down, and I just love the idea of painting and doing new paintings all the time. So I think I'll sign this, varnish it, put it in a frame, which often brings the painting to a new level that you don't expect and improves it quite a bit, and we'll see what it looks like.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.